Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. I hope you all are doing well. It is Thursday morning. We are back with another transfer update. We have had some transfer news over the last couple of hours or so regarding Arnaut Danjuma. We're going to get into that. We're also going to talk about Leeds United winger Wilfried Gnonto and how we've had some reports suggesting that a move to Everton is edging closer. Before we get into any of that, as always, don't forget to check out the top link in the description, which is the link to Vintage Football Shirt, the best place to get any of your vintage Everton memorabilia, whether it be shirts, whether it be shorts, whether it be training gear. They've got everything from the early 80s all the way up until the recent years of the last couple of years, of course, there, as you can see, everything in between, all of the David Moyes years, early Roberto Martinez, some really good offers there. Obviously shirts with names and numbers on the back as well, so don't forget to go and click the top link in the description to check out that website if you're looking to purchase any vintage footballing shirts. And a big thanks to Vintage Football Shirts for getting involved with the channel. But let's just jump straight into it, because over the last 5 minutes or so, we have had some breaking news at the time of recording this video coming from Fabrizio Romano. When we always do these videos and we talk about transfer rumours and we talk about reports and we talk about players being linked with Everton, I always say, you know, unless it's your Fabrizio Romano, unless it's David Ornstein, unless it's The Athletic, unless it's, you know, there's about 4 to 5 reporters and journalists that when they bring information out, you sort of listen. Everybody else is almost like it's just paper talk at this point, but Fabrizio Romano is one of them that, you know, when they're reporting on something, it usually means that it's at the very least in the pipeline, and in this situation potentially close to being completed. Fabrizio Romano has reported literally 5 minutes ago, Everton are closing in on Danjuma deal. Understood the bid has now been accepted. Here we go soon. Understand it's going to be a loan move. Player believes Everton is best for his career. After January hijack, the communication stayed open and now Everton have their player. Obviously, this is massive news because it's actually something. We done a video a couple of days ago and I explained in that video how I felt very much like everything that we've been reading and seeing over the last week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so has very much just been the same news recycled and reworded to try and make it seem a little bit different, to try and get us excited again. But really all as it's been is, you know, news that Everton are interested in Wilfried Gnonto, then news that Everton have bid, then news that Everton actually haven't bid but are still interested, etc. And we've just been hearing the same stuff for a number of weeks now, and same with Arnaut Danjuma. Really, it's been the same sort of stuff. Everton are still interested, the player is interested. Yesterday there was a report in the media that Arnaut Danjuma was one step away from joining AC Milan, and that report came half an hour after another report from a different news outlet suggesting that AC Milan can't afford Arnaut Danjuma, so that was a little bit funny. So as I said, you know, we would have been coming on talking about that stuff if it wasn't for this report by Fabrizio Romano, but again, that would have been the conversation of, well, it's reports at this point and there's nothing really solid and it's all just the same sort of stuff being recycled. But now we've actually had, you know, a solid report from a journalist that a lot of people deem obviously very highly reliable, and Fabrizio Romano doesn't often come out and say things unless he genuinely believes them to be the truth. He has got some things wrong in the past. He has. It has to be said. He's not perfect, as is nobody. But, you know, ultimately this is clearly a very reliable piece of information, and hopefully it looks at this point like Everton are close to making their second signing of the summer. In regards to Danjuma, listen, there's the obvious issue of what happened in January, and I think that will leave a lot of Evertonians to be a little bit sceptical of this, and not sceptical of necessarily the player and what he can bring, but just sceptical of whether or not this will happen. You know, we all know what happened in January. We had reports similar to this, closing in on a deal for Danjuma, players chosen Everton, you know, Everton have their player, etc. All of those words, all of those phrases were used in January, and then of course at the very last minute he turned around and decided to join Tottenham. So, you know, usually with any other player, we'd probably look at this report and think, right, okay, sound, we've signed our second player of the summer, or we're certainly on the course of doing that. with Danjuma, I think it's probably going to be a little bit more, well, we'll believe it when we see him at Finch Farm holding the shirt and you know, the picture of him signing the contract. In regards to the player himself, listen, you know, I understand that there will be a lot of Evertonians that aren't particularly pleased with this because of what happened in January. The reality of the situation is Arnaut Danjuma ultimately comes in and improves Everton. He does, and you know, at the end of the day, if Everton are wanting to bring in 4, 5, 6 players this summer, given our current situation financially and given the fact that we haven't got an awful lot of money to spend, in fact it seems at this point like we haven't got any money to spend, bringing in players that come in and improve us and are going to come in on a loan deal or going to come in on a, you know, a free, or are going to come in for virtually little money in the grand scheme of things, is the way Everton are going to go. And ultimately, Arnaut Danjuma does improve Everton. Now, I don't want to sit here and start saying he's better than Damari Gray, he's better than Alex Iwobi, etc., etc. The reality is he's a good winger. He can score goals. He didn't have a great time at Tottenham, you know, but granted, he wasn't given many of opportunity. And I have actually seen some Tottenham fans saying that when he was brought on, he actually done all right when he was brought on. He was just never given that chance to have a, you know, a run of games in the team and, you know, have an actual decent go at trying to make it there. Ultimately, you know, I think there's a little bit of irony in the part of the Fabrizio Romano report that reads, player believes Everton is best for his career, because apparently he believed Everton were best for his career, you know, in January as well, and I wouldn't put it past them to, you know, get an offer from AC Milan over the coming days and turn around and go, actually, do you know what, this is best for my career. So I'm not getting too excited about it at the moment. Maybe he's learned his lesson. Maybe he's looked at January and thought, no, do you know what? I started to do that in January and it didn't work for me, so I'm going to go here. He'll play every week at Everton, whereas he won't at, you know, clearly at Tottenham, and he probably won't at AC Milan. You know, he will be, I don't want to say loved and adored by the fan base, because I do think it will take time for the fan base to grow on him because of what happened. And the worry for me is if he has a couple of bad games at the start of the season, are we going to get, you know, the whole, well, he didn't want to be here in the first place, his attitude isn't right, he wasn't asked anyway, etc., etc. What Arnaut Danjuma certainly has to do if he comes to Everton Football Club is get his head down and work hard, and in those first 4 or 5 Premier League games of the season, he has to give absolutely everything and he has to prove himself. Ultimately, he has to work a little bit harder than any other new signing coming in this summer because of what happened in January. Now, whether people think that is right or wrong, whether people, you know, I've seen a load of Evertonians on social media saying they're not actually bothered about what happened in January. That's football, it is what it is. All as they're bothered about is bringing him in because ultimately he improves the team, which he does. But the reality is whereas, you know, I don't know, an Ashley Young or maybe a Wilfried Gnonto, if he's to come in, or anybody else that comes in, whereas they'll get a little bit of leeway because they're a new signing and they're adapting to the team and they're adapting to the league. I'm not quite sure Danjuma will get that. He might get that from some Blues, but there will definitely be a lot of Blues that if he doesn't at least get his head down and give everything straight away, there will be Blues saying, well, he didn't want to be here anyway. Is his attitude right? Is he only here because he didn't have another offer on the table, etc., etc.? We know that will happen because we know those conversations take place. And that's not me saying, by the way, he has to come in and score 5 goals in his first 5 games, otherwise people are going to be on his back. All as I'm saying is he has to come in and give absolutely everything in his first couple of months, but really, he should come in and give absolutely everything every time he puts the shirt on, and so should every other player that plays in that blue shirt. It's not beyond the realms of possibility for me to expect as an Evertonian that every single player that walks onto that pitch gives everything in that blue shirt. I'm not saying that if Danjuma doesn't come in and score an hat-trick on his debut, people will be handing him out because they'll be talking about his attitude. What I'm saying is Danjuma has to come in and he has to give that extra 5 or 10% because of what happened in January. But he should give that extra 5 or 10% anyway, because that's what all of the players should be doing, whether they've just come into the football club or whether they've been at the football club for 15 years. In Seamus Coleman's case, they should always give absolutely everything when they go on that pitch. The reality of the Danjuma stuff is whether we like it or not, and I don't mind. To be perfectly honest with you, you know, yes, it was disappointing in January. Now, I was asked about the Danjuma stuff a couple of weeks ago when it first broke that Everton could be interested again in him, and I personally believe that there was other players out there that were as good, if not better than Danjuma, that would come in on a similar type of deal that wouldn't have the previous of what happened in January to sort of have to deal with. However, if Everton can't explore those options for whatever reason, whether it be not being able to put the initial fee down because of finances, whether it be those types of players don't want to join Everton, whatever it might be, if Danjuma becomes the only option and the main option, then I've got no real issue with bringing him in. I think he improves this team. I think he brings quality in the attacking areas. He can score goals, he can attack, he can cross the ball in, he can get involved, and as well, maybe, just maybe, what happened in January will actually give him a boost because he's now got a point to prove at Everton. You know, he may have come in January, and whilst he tweeted a load of stuff in January about having that dog in him and wanting to come in and wanting to work hard and wanting to, impress, etc., etc., he may have come in January, had a couple of games, realised the situation was difficult, and then thought, actually, do you know what? I just want to go back to my parent club in the summer. I'm not really ready for this. Whereas now, he knows what to expect because he knows that there will be some fans that are maybe on his back. He knows that Everton struggled towards the back end of last season, and there's a very big possibility Everton will struggle again this season, whether we like that or not. And that's not me being negative. That's me being realistic. And he knows that he will have to work a little bit harder than maybe what he would have done if he was coming in January because of what happened. He knows all of that. I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he thinks, well, I'll go to Everton and they'll just love me straight away. I think he probably knows, right, okay, if I'm making this step, I'm going to have to really, really prove myself. Now, I had to prove myself anyway, but now I'm going to have to really, really prove myself. And that may work out in our favour because we might get a player now with a bit of a point to prove. We might get a player now with a bit of a chip on his shoulder because he's thinking, well, yeah, I do want to go and play there and I want to show them fans why I want to play there and I want to show them fans that I actually do want to be there. So that all may work in our favour as well. Ultimately, I'm just happy to see Everton sign another player, to be honest with you. When we signed Ashley Young, I was pleased at the fact that we'd signed a player. Now, okay, Ashley Young mightn't have been the most exciting signing, and I mightn't have been jumping up and down, opening bottles of champagne when we done the video, but I was just happy that Everton had signed somebody, because it had been nearly a year since we'd last signed somebody. So, bringing Danjuma in is great because it's another player. It's an attacking player. It will ultimately impress the fan base because it's a signing. Now, yes, there will be some people with their doubts, and that's fine, and that's right. People are right to have their doubts about this player because of what happened previously, but then it's down to the player to prove that wrong, isn't it? Or not necessarily prove it wrong, but it's down to the player to earn that respect and earn that relationship with Evertonians, because he won't have it straight away. So it's down to him to earn that. Ultimately, the very footballing side of things, take away the personal side of things and whatever happened in January or whatever. Let's look purely at the footballing side of things. Does Arnaut Danjuma improve Everton? Yes, he does. Is he better than our current options? There's arguments to be had, but he certainly improves the squad, and he certainly would, more than likely would come in and start every week, wouldn't he? Especially if we're looking at, an option to maybe sell Damari Gray to Saudi Arabia or whatever else. So, from a sheer footballing side of things, I think it's a good move. It seems like this one is going to get done now, although, as I said at the start of the video, I'm not holding my breath. But Fabrizio Romano, very reliable source, stating that Everton have got their player. So, let's hope that we can get that one done and dusted, and let's hope that we can get it signed and sealed and sort of all announced and stuff over the next coming days. So probably a little bit too late for him to have any involvement on the weekend in the pre-season games, but if he can have an involvement on Tuesday against Bolton, then that would be absolutely fantastic, of course. So yeah, there you go. Fabrizio Romano stating that Everton are closing in on a deal for Danjuma, and he understands the bid has been accepted. It will be a loan move, and hopefully we can get that one tied up and announced over the next coming days. So it'll be interesting to see his first interview as well, and whether or not he mentions working hard and whether or not he mentions having to impress, etc., etc. I highly doubt anybody at Everton is going to sit down and go, why did you jib us in January, lad? But it will certainly be an interesting watch, that one moment. So yeah, there you go. Obviously, we'll keep you all up to date with how that one progresses over the coming days, but it looks like we are finally moving forward and finally making positive steps towards making new signings. I'm quite sick of coming on and doing transfer videos where I'm just repeating myself and we're just talking about the same stuff. Whereas I was quite pleasantly surprised this morning to see that we're actually talking about something that is quite solid and has clearly got something in it, as opposed to just, hollow nonsense transfer rumours. Anyway, moving on now to Leeds United winger Wilfried Gnonto. According to Jack Talbot, Wilfried Gnonto has expressed his willingness to join Everton, and it is believed the club will make a new offer to Leeds, whose valuation is closer to £19 million. It's thought that a compromise can be reached. TV dello Sport, who are a Italian sports company, of course, obviously, Wilfried Gnonto being Italian himself, they reported last night that Wilfried Gnonto's agent is in London to finalise a deal for Gnonto to sign for Everton. Again, you know what? I might contradict myself a little bit here, and I'm fine to do that because that's football, and I've constantly said in the 5 years I've done this channel that football is about contradiction, and football is constantly about, having a difference in opinions. Whilst, had we have not had the Danjuma news this morning, I would probably be sitting here saying, well, this just seems like more of the same sort of nonsense that we've had for the last couple of weeks, i.e. the same news repackaged and reworded and put back out to make it seem different, but actually it's exactly the same stuff as what we heard last week. I do sort of feel like this is moving a little bit faster than what it was over the last couple of weeks, and I don't know why. There's no real logical explanation as to why I feel that is the case. Obviously the Jack Talbot report doesn't suggest that Everton are closer to signing him. It just suggests that the player has made expressed a willingness to join the football club, and it is thought that a compromise can be reached. And obviously TV dello Sport reporting that his agent is in talks with Everton. I think I said on the last video we did when we spoke about Gnonto that this situation is now getting to a point where, for me, Everton have to either bring the player in or move on from the player. And by that, what I mean is Everton have to say to Leeds United, listen, this is our offer. This is what we can offer you now as an upfront payment, and this is what we'll be able to offer you over the course of 4, 5, 6 seasons, whatever it may be. Take it or don't take it, and if you don't take it, we're just going to move away and go and look at somebody else, because we can't spend another 2-3 weeks on this one transfer target. But I also said in that video that I feel like we're at the point now with the Gnonto situation where we almost have to not depend, but we almost have to hope that the player himself makes a decision for himself. Because I said last week, I am firmly in the camp of believing that if Wilfried Gnonto turns around and says, do you know what, I'm happy to stay here, I'm not really interested in moving to Everton, I'll stay at Leeds, then I don't think Everton will sign him. Because I think all Leeds United will keep doing is going, well, we want a little bit more money, or we don't want it over 3 years, we want it over 2 years, or we want a bigger upfront payment now, because they know the player's happy, he wants to stay there, so they're in no rush to sell him. They're happy with him, of course, they want to keep him for the championship season, etc., etc. So I said that I felt like if Wilfried Gnonto turned around and said, no, do you know what, I'm happy here, I want to stay at Leeds, I don't think Everton will sign him. And I think Everton should be made aware, or make themselves aware of what the player's stance is, so that they know, right, okay, the player's not even really that interested, so we're going to move away and we're going to move on to someone else. However, if the player does want to come to Everton, then that's when the ball's a little bit in Everton's court, because Everton can then work on that deal, and Leeds United know, well, the player wants to go anyway, so maybe we will settle for 18, 19 million quid over 4 seasons because the player wants to move. Now, this report this morning, again, that's why it feels like it's a little bit further down the line than it was last week, because this report is suggesting that the player has expressed his willingness to join Everton, and it is thought a compromise can be reached. So if that's the case, if Wilfried Gnonto has now turned around and said to Leeds, listen, I do want to join Everton, then I think things will start moving further and further. Whether that means we'll find an agreement with Leeds is a completely different question, because Everton mightn't have the upfront fee that Leeds wants, and Leeds might sit there and go, well, yeah, you want him and he wants to leave, but you haven't got the dough to pay for him, so he ain't going nowhere, and he might end up somewhere else, or he might end up staying at Leeds. But it does feel, if that report is true by Jack Talbot, that we are a little bit further down the line. Not as far down the line as the Danjuma stuff, clearly, but we are at least, we've at least got off the bus and got onto the train to our destination. We might still be a flight and a boat away from our destination, but we've been on that bus for the last 3 weeks now. It seems like we may have got off that bus and are now on the train to get the flight, if you get what I mean. Mad analogy, but you all get what I mean. Whether or not this happens, we'll wait and see. I still think Everton should be adopting a sort of policy of saying, well, listen, this is what we can offer, this is how much we can offer, take it or leave it, and and maybe, and I know this is probably not right, and probably you would be snarled upon, but maybe trying to get a message to the player to say, listen, if you want this move, then you're going to have to push a little bit for this move, because Leeds United aren't particularly playing ball. And then if Leeds say, well, no, Everton might say, listen, we'll pay you 25 million quid over 3 years, but we can only give you 5 million quid now. And Leeds might go, well, we want 8 million quid. Well, if Everton can't pay that 8 million quid, then there's absolutely no point dilly-dallying about with the transfer. We may as well go, all right, Sam, no worries, we're going to move on to someone else. But if Gnonto knocks on the door and says, well, I want to go there, I want to move, I want that move to Everton, I want to go and sign for them, then maybe Leeds will go, do you know what? Do we want to keep a player that's unhappy here that we're probably going to end up selling anyway, or should we get the money in now and then go and reinvest it elsewhere? Sad, we'll take the 5 million quid. It's one of them. Whatever happens with it, we'll wait and see. A couple of, different reporters that, maybe, aren't quite as reliable as what you would hope, but a couple of rumours and murmurs on social media suggesting that it's getting closer and he does want that move. So hopefully over the next few days or so we'll have more news and information on that. The Bobble confirmed last night that Everton have parted ways with sleeve sponsor Box T. The club are to finalise a more lucrative agreement for the 23-24 season. He did report in June that the sleeve sponsor with Box T is set to end, and that the Blues were not going to exercise their option for a further year. So there you go, a little bit of news there surrounding the shirt sponsor. I don't actually think the Box T sponsor is on any of the home shirts that are being sold on the website. So that makes sense. Hopefully Everton can get another deal for another company to come in and give us more money than what Box T. I see these sponsorship things in a very, very simple way. I don't really care who's on the sleeve. I know we had Angry Birds and it was a little bit embarrassing and it didn't look great, and Box T was a big chunky logo and that didn't look great, but as long as the company obviously is morally in the right place and isn't like somebody that people look at and go, well, why are they bringing them in? I'm not really bothered who it is. Whoever's giving us the most money, sound. If it's Kellogg's, Cornflakes, sound. If it's Apple, sound. If it's, Dave's Garage down the road, sound. Whoever's giving us the most money, sound. Because that's ultimately what it is. There's loads of sleeve sponsorships in the Prem that you look at and you go, well, why have they got them? I think, is it Leeds have just been sponsored by Flamingo Land? And people will go, Flamingo Land, except, but if Flamingo Land are giving them 5 million quid a year to sponsor the sleeve, then sound. Whereas, you might go, oh, well, that deal looks better on the shirt, but they're only giving you 2 million quid. At the end of the day, with the position Everton are in financially, it's about how much money we can bring in. And if Box T are not bringing in as much as what somebody else could give us, and Everton can go and bring in somebody else, then that is that's the right deal for me, in my opinion. That's the right situation for me. According to Vinny O'Connor, who of course is a reporter for Sky Sports News, he has stated that Everton are interested in signing Ajax striker Brian Brobby. Everton have made no formal bid so far, but have made their interest known. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I had no clue who Brian Brobby was before I read this report earlier this morning. He's 21 years old. He was born in the Netherlands, born in Amsterdam, currently playing for Ajax, as is just been mentioned by Vinny O'Connor. He played 32 games in the Eredivisie last season, 13 goals and 3 assists with 1 yellow card. He did play 5 games in the Champions League and 2 games in the Europa League as well last season, but he never registered a goal. He played 4 games in the Dutch Cup, got 1 goal and 1 assist. That was last season. The season before that, he played 11 games in the Eredivisie with 7 goals and 1 assist, and he also played in the Bundesliga on loan at RB Leipzig, I believe, and played 9 games in the Bundesliga, 2 assists, no goals. So, 13 goals last season, which is obviously significantly more than any of our players got. Granted, it was in the Eredivisie, which of course isn't anywhere near as strong of a league as what the Premier League is. Still decent numbers, a good age, 21 years old. Whether or not Ajax would be willing to sell him for a decent fee, I'm not quite sure. They would probably want quite a considerable amount of money for him, given his age and given the fact that if he has another good year in the Eredivisie, then they'll probably get a ridiculous bid from one of the top clubs in England for 50-60 million, i.e. Rasmus Højlund. However, if Everton can get this deal done, this is the type of deal that Everton should be looking to do. Young strikers in Europe that are looking good, doing well, had a good season, and with a lot of potential. What Everton have failed to do in previous seasons is bring in these types of players when they are a little bit raw, when they are a little bit rough around the edges, when they do need a little bit of work, when they do need a little bit of coaching, but when the potential is there, and when the signs are there of a good forward, and with a little bit of work and with a little bit of, filing the edges, etc., etc., they could then become a really, really top forward in European football. Everton have failed to see these deals when these players have been 18, 19, 20 years old. And then when they've been 23, 24 years old, we're being linked with them for 30, 40 million quid. Now, I don't know how much Brian Brobby would cost Everton. He would probably cost somewhere in the region of 10, 15 million pounds. Brobby, is it? I don't know how you pronounce it. He would probably cost somewhere in the region of 10, 15 million pounds, I can imagine, because of his age and because he scored 13 goals in the league last season for the 21-year-old. So I don't think Ajax would be willing to sell him for buttons. However, if you offer them 10 million, they might go, well, do you know what? 10 million quid, there's no guarantee you'll go on and do that again next season. We'll take that and we'll reinvest it. And then ultimately you've got a player that will certainly need working on and will certainly need bedding in to the team, because as I've just said, the Premier League is a much more difficult league than what the Eredivisie is. However, somebody with real potential who could go on and maybe be a top level forward. Again, I'm not going to sit here and claim he will be, because I don't know anything of him. I've never seen him play football, and I'll be brutally honest, 24 hours ago I never knew he existed. However, looking at his numbers, looking at his age, looking at his stature, he seems to be the right type of fit. And again, in an ideal situation, if Everton were in the financial position we were in and we had 60, 70 million quid to spend this summer, this would be a great deal to go and do for 10, 15 million quid, bring him in, work on him, but not need to rely on him. But the situation Everton are in, are we going to be able to do that? Or if we bring him in, are we going to need to rely on him, and that might add pressure to him, and that might, ultimately mean he doesn't reach those levels that he could reach? I don't know, but it's an exciting one. Vinny O'Connor reporting on it, who is a reliable source, works for Sky and obviously works closely to the football club. So again, we'll wait and see how this one progresses over the coming days. And former Everton forward Wayne Rooney has been talking on the state of Everton. He says it's a club that has clearly been broken over the last few years and they don't seem to get it right off the pitch. The players have to do better. They've got some really good players and they're underachieving through the quality of the squad. That was Wayne Rooney speaking to The Athletic about various different things, and obviously Everton being one of them. Can't really fault what he says. He's absolutely right. I'm not quite sure about the real quality in the squad. That for me is questionable, but what he says about the football club and not getting it right and the state of the football club is absolutely spot on. I couldn't disagree with him. And then, according to Sasha Tavaleri, we are not yet at the stage of formal negotiations, but I understand Everton have took initial information on the players' side to glimpse the possibilities of a deal for Victor Boniface. Look how that is written. There's actually absolutely no offer for the Nigerian striker on the table of USG, even though the player's open to a move. So basically, Everton are interested in Victor Boniface, who is a good player and would be a good signing. By Leverkusen also potentially interested, and Sasha Tavaleri saying the player's keen on the move. But the way that statement is written, Everton have took initial information on the player's side to glimpse the possibilities. Basically, Everton have watched them a couple of times and are interested in him. nothing more at this stage. So there you go. There you go. Anyway, we are going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. We will be back over the next couple of days with more transfer news and rumours. So don't forget to look out for those. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe. It would mean a massive amount to me. And yeah, as I said, leave your comments down below and we'll get involved with as many of them as we can. Big thanks for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe if you're new. And we'll see you after.